Whose image is this? Show me the coin used for the tax. And they brought him a denarius. Then he said to them, whose head is this, and whose title? They answered, the emperor's. Then he said to them, give therefore to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's. Whose image is this? Have you ever been in a situation where a response either way would be difficult? Someone put the following scenario to me once. Your mother and your wife are both drowning, but you can save only one of them. Who would you save? Now, that's a really hard decision. That would be difficult both ways and would be a real conflict or dilemma for me, my wife or my mother. Who would I save? In life, we have to deal with different conflicts all the time. We have become familiar with the term conflict of interests, which is applied when people find themselves in a situation where their ability to make a judgment in one matter is potentially affected, clouded, or prejudiced by their interest in another. So it would be expected that a judge, for example, would recuse himself or herself if the person on trial in his or her court were a close relative. That would represent something of a conflict of interest. Conflicts arise all the time, and religion and politics can be real sources of conflict. I don't have to tell you how divisive religious and political issues can be. I'm sure you can think right now of examples of relationships that have been rent asunder over religion and politics. Saying that you don't believe in religion or that you avoid discussing politics will not mean the end of conflict for you, since so much that we do in life revolves around religious matters, and politics really has to do with life. Jesus found himself in the midst of a religious and political conflict when he was confronted by the disciples of the Pharisees and the Herodians with this question: is it lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not? That represented for Jesus a religious and political conflict. The Pharisees, you see, were a religious sect, and the Herodians a political group in the time of Jesus. These groups were not necessarily friendly towards each other. In fact, they were in many ways opposing groups. The Pharisees were zealous about upholding the law of Moses and ensuring the purity of their religion. Their purpose was to interpret the law and ensure that it was practiced with all fidelity. They looked for a Messiah, one who would conquer their enemies and usher in a season, a reign of peace. The Herodians, on the other hand, were a Jewish political party interested in restoring a reign like that of Herod the Great in Judea and other areas where he had influence. They would be regarded as the representatives of Herod and other Roman interests. These two groups were groups with opposing interests, but they came together on this occasion for a common purpose against Jesus. They tried to bait Jesus with a question about paying taxes to the emperor. Is it lawful, they asked, to pay taxes to the emperor or not? If Jesus answered yes to this question, he would be playing straight into the hands of the Pharisees, who would then accuse him of not being a true Jewish patriot. They would have accused him of not being true to Jewish ideals, but as one who was in collusion with the Roman government. We hear that word nowadays. The Roman government that imposed what was known as a census tax, which for the Jews was a reminder of their occupation and oppression by Rome. This tax was paid in Roman currency, a coin known as the denarius was the amount that each person had to pay for this census tax. And Jews were really opposed to paying this tax. On the other hand, Jesus would play into the hands of the Herodians if he gave a flat-out no in answer to this question about paying taxes to the emperor. He would be viewed by the Herodians as a revolutionary and would be accused of sedition or inciting people to rebel against the Roman authority. So you see, my sisters and brothers, this was a real conundrum for Jesus. It was a lose-lose situation, a conflict, a dilemma. And we can learn from Jesus' response to those who came to him with this question, designed to trap him, how to handle conflict. Jesus teaches us quite well here how we might handle the conflicts that we will face in our life from day to day. And Jesus, in the first place, saw through their trickery and hypocrisy. The text tells us that these groups were out to trick Jesus. That was their motive. Their interests, as we have seen, couldn't be more diametrically opposed. But they came together to trap Jesus. Additionally, they tried to flatter Jesus. You know, back home we would say they sweet-talked him. With all the nice things they said to him in order that they might lure Jesus or flatter him into providing an answer because of all the nice and flattering things that they had to say about him. But Jesus saw straight through their masks. He saw their trickery and their hypocrisy. He was aware that they were attempting, or what they were attempting to do, that this was a deliberate plot to ensnare him. So in dealing with conflict, my friends, it is important to watch out for motives and carefully discern what is at stake. In this case, the Pharisees and the Herodians were not really interested in tax. They were out to trap Jesus. That is what was at stake here. They were out to get Jesus. And so they used the question of paying taxes to the emperor as their bait. But Jesus was equal to their trickery. Jesus saw through their hypocrisy and didn't allow himself to get drawn into their trap. Calling for a coin, he gave a response that amazed both groups. "Show me the coin used for the tax," he said. And they brought him a denarius. Then he said to them, "Whose head or whose image or whose face is this, and whose title?" And they answered, "The emperor's." Then he said to them, "Give therefore to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's." What a brilliant answer. What a great response to a situation of religious and political conflict. And you know what? That settled it. They left him and went away. But as we think about this further, my sisters and brothers, I would like you to see how Jesus, in giving that response, pointed to God's supremacy. Not only did he see through the trickery and hypocrisy of those who came to him, but he also used the opportunity to point to God's supremacy. The way Jesus handled this dilemma provides some guidance in dealing with many of the conflicts in which we will find ourselves. The coin that was shown to Jesus had certain distinguishing marks or features that identified it as belonging to the emperor, as a Roman coin. The emperor's head or image or face and his title were some of the features of that coin. And we can readily identify the money of a particular country from that of another country by similar features. After all, we would not mistake an American coin for that of another country. We can easily identify the currency of one country from another. So if the coin was made to honor or recognize the emperor, then give it to him. That's what Jesus was saying. As citizens and subjects of a nation, we have an obligation to obey and respect authority. Of course, no one wants to live in an oppressive society, but we recognize that in order for the government to function, to provide certain services, it is necessary to have certain taxes. These days, we're hearing quite a bit about tax reform in America. And it is my prayer that after all the debate and all the discussion, that whatever taxes have to be paid will be fair and reasonable. Jesus' response in our text today, however, points to something very important. Just as the coin that was shown to Jesus, the denarius, the Roman currency, bore the image, the face, the title of the emperor, we human beings bear the image of God. We belong to God. We are God's. If we go back to the story of creation, we would recall how it is said, "Let us make human beings in our own image, after our likeness." And so, my sisters and brothers, We must give to God what is God, who is sovereign and supreme over all. The psalmist in Psalm 8 reminds us or says, what is man? What is a human being? That you are mindful of him. Mere mortals that you care for him. Yet you have made him a little lower than yourself. We are made in the image of God. We are made just a little lower than God. We are God's creation. We belong to God. So in the final analysis, my sisters and brothers, Jesus' response is helpful when we face conflicting loyalties. We will face conflicting loyalties in life. And we can think about Jesus' response here in dealing, in handling those conflicting loyalties that we will face. Give to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's. So what are the things that are God's? And what are the things that are the emperor's? We must decide. And in our moments when our loyalties clash, conflict, we would be guided in how to act. So I like the fact that in his response, Jesus demonstrated that there was no either or situation. There was no need to prefer one position to the other. In fact, there is really no dichotomy. Doing what one is expected to do as a citizen of a nation, of a country, of a land, is not necessarily opposed to doing what is expected of one as a citizen of God's kingdom or as a child of God. Jesus, on this occasion, turned a lose-lose situation into what I call a win-win situation. Friends, it is regrettable when our duties, our loyalties in the world, and our duty, our loyalty to God are set in opposition to each other. I think that is regrettable. When we find ourselves thinking that our loyalty, our commitment to the things of the world, to our job, and other responsibilities that we might have must be set in opposition to the things of God, that it must be either or. In other words, being a member of God's kingdom doesn't mean that individuals should not fulfill their worldly responsibilities. While you may consider yourself, or some people may consider themselves as bound for heaven, in the meantime, we have to remember that we are bound to earth. And as such, there are some things that are part of what it means to be a member of the earthly society, of the world society. Notwithstanding, while carrying out our earthly obligations and living up to our earthly duties and loyalties, we must not lose sight that we are God's stewards, that we are bearers of God's image, and that we owe God our worship and our gratitude. So while we give to the earthly authorities our time, our service, our honor, let us not forget to give to God what is God's: our soul, our life, our all. In fact, rightly understood, we owe more to God than we owe to any other authority. And part of our stewardship as we go through life is to give of our time, our talents, and our treasure, our money, since we are speaking about paying taxes today. We must remember, my friends, that giving of our resources, of our material resources, of our time and our other gifts, that all of that is part of our worship and our service to God. Give to Caesar. Give to the emperor the things that are the emperor's. And give to God the things that are God. So when we understand that we bear God's image, we also recognize how much of what we owe and what we are and what we hope to be belong to God. Oh, my sisters and brothers, let us be faithful in the things of God as we are in our worldly affairs, since in the end, God reigns supreme over all. Since in the end, we are all God's, and all that we have belongs to God. So while we fulfill our duties on earth, while we live up and are faithful to our allegiances and loyalties in this world, let us not forget our allegiance and the loyalty that we owe to God. So give to the emperor what is the emperor's, and give to God what is God's. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.